Welcome to the podcast growth series. If you're ready to grow your audience, increase your downloads, and finally see your podcast gain the traction it deserves, this series is for you. Over the next 12 episodes, I'll guide you step by step through strategies to help you understand your audience, make your content more discoverable, and create episodes that listeners love to share. This isn't just a series for inspiration or fluff. It is designed to help you achieve real, tangible growth. Each episode is built on the last, giving you practical, actionable insights you can implement right away. By the end, you have a complete system for sustainable podcast growth, and you have achieved real progress towards the audience and impact you've always wanted. So grab your notebook and pen, and let's get started. Well, hello there, my darling. Welcome back to the podcast growth series. This is episode 3 of the series, and today we're talking about how to create podcast episodes that resonate and get shared. So my goal with you today is to teach you how to create episodes that deeply resonate with your audience and encourage them to organically share your podcast with their friends and their family and their coworkers and everybody they know. And I'm really excited about today's episode, and I'm not gonna lie, I just had a full shot of espresso with full-fat coconut milk. If you have not tried that, go give it a try. It is so good. No sugar, just like amazing organic coconut milk and coffee. So good. And as we're speaking, I'm actually getting ready. Well, not literally right now, but I'm getting ready to go on vacation with my family. We have not been on vacation since 2022, and it feels like forever ago. So I'm super excited to go on vacation with my family and just enjoy my kids, enjoy my husband, and come back with a few stories to share with you. So let's get started and let's talk about how to use the power of storytelling to create episodes that your audience cannot get enough of. Now, whenever people hear storytelling, it just feels like, oh my gosh, storytelling. I can't do this. But here's the thing. I just told you a story, how I'm going on vacation, how I had coffee with coconut milk, and that was the story. That was it. Like, I was just telling you what's currently happening in my life, and one of those two resonated with you. So whether it was me telling you how I just had a shot of coffee with full-fat coconut milk, you're either like, oh my gosh, that's disgusting, or you could envision yourself giving that a try, or the vacation story. You could empathize with that somehow. Maybe you're like, oh my gosh, I need a vacation. I wish I could go on vacation. I just came back from vacation. I'm going to go on vacation. It doesn't matter, right? The point is, one of those two stories resonated with you, and I just told you what was happening in my life. Nothing crazy about it. Just me coming on air and telling you what's happening. And here's the thing. The thing about storytelling is that humans connect with stories more than facts alone. Because if I told you, did you know that 70% of people who drink their coffee with full-fat coconut milk get better results and they have more energy? You'd be like, oh, okay, cool. That's a fact. And it might sound exciting for like 5 minutes, but then if you were to retell that story to somebody, now you're like, oh my gosh, did you say 70%? Was it 90%? I don't remember. And does she have any sources or anything like that? So, of course, there are times where facts and figures and data, they're super important. But remember, we connect with stories, and we always have to go back to the basics. We have overcomplicated life. We have overcomplicated businesses. And if we just go back to the basics, that's really what we're craving. We're craving more of that connection, of that storytelling. Not only that, storytelling increases retention and shareability, which is what we want. So let's talk about a few frameworks for storytelling so you have something to go off of next time you're recording an episode. So you might have heard of the hero's journey, and that's basically you overcoming an obstacle. And whether the obstacle is in entrepreneurship or personal growth or your industry challenges, and how you overcame that. So for example, Star Wars, that is a hero's journey. And I would tell you guys more about Star Wars, but I really don't remember. I think it was Luke Skywalker, right? And he had his problems and all that. I'm not going to go into it because it's been years. And as you can tell, I am not a diehard fan. Sorry. But that is a very typical case of using the hero's journey to tell a story. And there's also the 3-act structure. I tend to use more this one when I do my episodes. And this is how I structure. And this is not me, like my structure. This is like the structure. I did not come up with this. So Act 1, you're setting the stage. You're introducing the challenge. Act 2, you're building the tension. So like the struggle, the learning, the insights, whatever. And Act 3 is the resolution. So the lessons and the takeaways. And honestly, this works really well for solo episodes, for interview, for case studies. And this is why I like this so much, because I'm just coming on, I'm telling you something, and I don't have to give it much thought. For me personally, the hero's journey can sometimes feel like if I have to think about it too much, then I get in my head. So I tend not to use the hero's journey. If you go back and you listen to my episodes, you see that I'm using the 3-act structures over and over again. So now that you have the background on the storytelling framework, we have to go into the next step of creating that really amazing episode that gets people to listen to your full episode, but also share your episode, which is to balance the evergreen content and trend-based content. So here's the thing. Again, looking at my own episodes, you can tell that my episodes are really timeless. You can listen to an episode today, tomorrow, you can listen to an episode whenever, and it always applies to you. The backbone of my podcast is talking about podcast SEO and different facets of podcast SEO, podcast growth, podcast visibility, podcast marketing, right? This is everything that I talk about, and it's very timeless. I am not talking to you about the news. There might be some times like you might listen to an older episode where I am launching something, but that is just me launching something. It's part of a business, right? But the lentils of my podcast episode, like the juicy part of my episode, is timeless and it is evergreen. I love creating this type of content because it is valuable forever, basically, until something major changes. That episode is valuable to you. So if I'm talking about SEO and you want to learn more about SEO, you can go back and listen to all the episodes I have on SEO, because SEO has not changed much. That is the power of creating timeless content. It builds long-term downloads and, of course, the SEO benefits, right? Like if I'm talking about podcast SEO specifically in my show, I become the go-to podcast SEO person that you're going to come to learn about podcast SEO. And those are very foundational principles and how-to guides that I'm sharing with you in every single episode. Now, you might have a trend-based podcast, so you're talking about current events, and that might give you a quick spike in downloads. The thing for me that I don't really like those trend-based content is because your content becomes irrelevant very quickly, right? So if you are somebody in the news space, or if you're covering tech or let's say Instagram or stuff like that, like your content is always changing and you're always on the content hamster wheel. So again, let's think about my own podcast for a second and the fact that I'm doing monthly episodes, right? So if you listen to the beginning of the series, you heard me say that I'm just taking a different direction this year. I am the guinea pig. I am trying something new here. So far, it's going really well for me. But I have 400 episodes or so, or like close to 400 episodes. I'm not even quite sure. But let's say if you're like, oh my gosh, I miss Juliana so much and I want to listen to her. You can go back to like any episode of mine and that episode will be helpful to you. You're going to refresh your memory. You're going to learn something new because it's timeless content versus if I had this like very trendy podcast and I'm always talking about the latest and the greatest, it wouldn't apply to anymore because it's basically old news, So I tend to lean on the evergreen content because it is better for you. It is a better use of your time. But listen, if you have a trend-based podcast, that is who you are. That is what you do. And if that's working well for you, then keep going that direction. I recommend that you find a balance, right? So you can definitely use your evergreen content for depth and trends for visibility if you want to go that route. This is personally not something that I tend to do, but if you want to kind of mix both, you can. Because the thing about trend-based content is that if it's something that people are searching, right? Like you have a chance to put out an episode that is going to do really well for you and just give you the boost of visibility. The risk that you have there is if you go viral and people decide to stay with you and tune into what you have to say, but then they realize that they don't really like your style or you're not really the person for them, then you run that risk, right? Like going viral doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a good thing for your business. It's very contrary to what people believe. But if you want to balance both, you can, because like I said, the trends, they might give you a boost in visibility, but the evergreen, that is your diehard fans, that is what's going to build you a sustainable business that will grow over time. So now that we have talked about that, now we need to bring back in the emotional impact that you need to create when you are recording your episode. So why do people share podcast episodes? Think about the last time that you shared a podcast episode. It was because that content made you feel something. It made you feel inspired. Maybe it was curiosity based. It was exciting for you. It was nostalgic, right? So that made you want to share the podcast episode because it made you feel something. And if you want people to share your podcast with their friends, with their family, so on and so forth, you need to learn how to infuse episodes with the emotional depth, so you can share your personal stories, you can share vulnerability. And by the way, don't let that term vulnerability get the best out of you. Vulnerability just means you're being honest and sharing what it is that you want to share. It doesn't mean that you're oversharing about your life. It doesn't mean that you're giving away all the little juicy details of what's happening behind closed doors. That's none of that. That's you just showing up and say, like, you know what, for example, a vulnerable episode for me, it was January 1st, the end of an era. If you go back and listen to that episode, I don't want to give away what was in that episode, but I was being vulnerable with you at that time. And I'll make sure to link that for you down in the show notes so you can go ahead and listen to that so you can see like, oh, okay, that's Juliana being vulnerable. Like I'm not oversharing anything crazy. The next way to infuse your episodes with emotional depth is for you to share relatable challenges and solutions, which again, I shared that in that podcast episode on January 1st. And if you are somebody who has guests on your podcast, then you can just have those guests that really share from the heart, that don't hold anything back. And your audience will walk away feeling like, wow, that was so impactful. And I cannot wait to share this. I cannot wait to apply this to my own life. So this is how you create that emotional impact. Don't feel like you need to think outside the box for this one. As long as you share from the heart, people will connect with you. Remember what I said a little while ago, that we're humans and we're craving that human connection, especially in this AI world. I was on Facebook the other day, total side tangent, and I was just kind of scrolling, and it was shocking actually it wasn't Facebook, it was LinkedIn, and I was shocked to see this one person who is using AI to write her content. And I was just like, wow, is everybody using AI to write their content? Because you can see, and everything just sounds the same. And, if you think about it, there are so many women out there today who look like the Kardashians. Like, you cannot even tell them apart anymore because they all look the same. The way that we write, it's all sounding the same because everybody's using AI. Okay, this is another big one. Because of social media and like aesthetics and like this thing is trendy and whatever, like everybody's homes are looking the same and we're all just looking the same. Like our life is just starting to look like very uniform, and that's just crazy to me. Now, like I said, this is a total tangent, but the point is I want you to be human in this world that is going towards AI more and more every single day. Be human. Remember, you are made in the image of the creator. So go there and bring that into your podcast episode. And listen, honestly, if you want to use AI to help you with your podcast episodes and like give you some ideas and outlines and whatever, go ahead, go for it. But don't just use what AI is telling you word for word, because you're going to sound like everybody else. And that's not the goal. The goal is for you to become more human in a world that's becoming more AI every single day and like looking more and more uniform every single day. Be the person who stands out because you are human. Listen, oh my gosh, another tangent, but I have to say because I am so passionate about this. If you are the person not using AI today, you are the person who's actually going to be able to stand out. For sure, you're not going to be the person creating as much content as everybody else. You're not going to be the person who is showing up on your podcast every single day. You're in creating all these things, right? And it might not be even very efficient for you, right? Because AI does save time, okay? However, if you take the time to just pour into your podcast you, the human you're going to see growth over time because everybody's going towards this AI. And very soon, everybody's going to get sick and tired of this. And I just want to give an example. When Reels and like TikTok and like all those things came out, at first it was just like silly videos, right? And then they became like this crazy production, and there was B-roll and there were sounds and whoosh and whatever, and music and whatever. And that became a trend for a while. And then people naturally gravitated back to the simple, like talking to the camera. There's no crazy B-roll and like sounds and, crazy B-roll or anything like that, because we crave the simplicity and we crave the humanness that the connection that we have with other people. So just putting that out there to give you an insight into how my brain works and into also how you can stand out in this crazy AI world. Okay, so moving on, and not sorry for all the tangents, but I do find them super helpful. How you're going to encourage people to share your podcast with other people, which this is great for that organic growth, right? Aside from SEO, but organically sharing your podcast with people, that is a form of organic growth as well. And I really like this because it is all about that grassroots movement and making people feel like they're part of something bigger. You want to share triggers, and I don't mean like you're gonna trigger people, like literally trigger people and offend people. That's not what I mean. People will share things that make them look smart, that make them feel inspired, that will relate with others very, very deeply. So it triggers something. It triggers an emotional, that there's like an emotional depth again that makes people trigger that piece of content with somebody else. And one way that you can make this work over and overdrive for you is that if you share your podcast, let's say with your email list, you could share a memorable quote. You could share, if you share on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. This isn't something that I'm necessarily a fan of because it's not like that many people are leaving Instagram to go check out a podcast episode. But if you wanted to, you could share that on Reels, or you could share that on a carousel on Instagram or something like that. But it needs to be something that makes people be like, whoa, this is so good and I cannot wait. And another thing that you can share are actionable insights. So like, what are practical tips that people actually want to share with other people? And lastly, something very surprising or something even counterintuitive sparks curiosity. So that will make people want to share your podcast episode with other people. So at the end of the day, the main takeaway of this episode is that it just needs to connect. Like your episode just needs to connect with somebody else. That is it. And how you do that is if you go back to episode 1, I give you the blueprint of how to make that connection happen. But the TLDR or the TLDL, which is too long didn't listen, is just be human, okay? And it's simple, but so many people are not doing this. So many people are just so stuck looking left and right to see what everybody else is doing. And let me just tell you that most people are reading off a script and they're not taking the time to connect with their listeners, and they just want to bang out episodes and they just want to create content up the wazoo, and it's just not working. It's just not working because the humanness is just leaving us, and that's very scary. Okay, so I do have a homework assignment for you, and for you to get the homework assignment, I will leave a link for you down below so that you can go ahead and grab your homework assignment, which will help you with your upcoming episodes. So go ahead and click in the link down below. And if you are already signed up for the homework assignments, you'll get that in your inbox today. And I'm super excited for that. And at the end of the day, it comes down to you applying the strategies to your show so that you can actually see change. And I'm super excited because in the next episode, I am breaking down how you can build a loyal listener community, right? Because we also have podcasts, and let's face it, right now, I am staring at my microphone and it's feeling kind of lonely. You know what I'm saying? So we need a community. But like, that's the thing about podcasting. It's easy because let me just tell you, I am still wearing my PJs. I have not brushed my hair. The kids are doing some martial arts. The baby's asleep. Of course, the husband is with the kids. And I'm like, let me just bang out this episode real quick. But that's what I love about podcasting, that I could just get to show up and pour my heart and soul into this episode and call it a day. But it's lonely without a community, right? So next episode, that's what we're talking about, how to build a community, because as you can tell, these episodes are building on one another. And very soon we're going to be talking about monetization, which is, again, the lentils of this podcast series, because I know it's what you want together. And if you're wondering why I'm saying lentils, it's because I'm vegan, so I'm not going to say the meat. I say lentils because, that's how I roll. Okay, my love. Love you. Thank you for tuning in. And I will see you on the first next month when we talk about building a loyal listener community. See you soon. Thank you so much for tuning in to the podcast growth series. Here's what to do next. Number 1, head over to julianabarbati.com/homework to grab your homework assignment for today's episode and start taking action on what you learned. Number 2, subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss the next step in your podcast growth journey. And number 3, come back on the first of the month next month for the next episode in the series. Until then, stay focused, take action, and don't let distraction pull you away from building the podcast you have always envisioned. You've got this, and I'll see you next month.